Welcome to the Sense Making in a Changing World podcast, where we explore the kind of thinking we need to navigate a positive way forward. I'm your host, Morag, permaculture educator and global ambassador, filmmaker, eco-villager, food forester, mother, practivist, and all-round lover of thinking, communicating, and acting regeneratively. For a long time, it's been clear to me that to shift trajectory to a thriving one-planet way of life, we first need to shift our thinking. The way we perceive ourselves in relation to nature, self, and community is the core. So this is true now more than ever, and even the way change is changing. Unprecedented changes are happening all around us at a rapid pace. So how do we make sense of this? To know which way to turn, to know what action to focus on, so our efforts are worthwhile and nourishing and are working towards resilience, regeneration, and reconnection. What better way to make sense than to join together with others in open, generative conversation? In this podcast, I'll share conversations with my friends and colleagues, people who inspire and challenge me in their ways of thinking, connecting, and acting. These wonderful people are thinkers, doers, activists, scholars, writers, leaders, farmers, educators, people whose work informs permaculture and spark the imagination of what a post-COVID, climate-resilient, socially just future could look like. Their ideas and projects help us to make sense in this changing world, to compost and digest the ideas, and to nurture the fertile ground for new ideas, connections, and actions. Together, we'll open up conversations in the world of permaculture design, regenerative thinking, community action, earth repair, eco-literacy, and much more. I can't wait to share these conversations with you. Over the last 3 decades of personally making sense of the multiple crises we face, I always return to the practical and positive world of permaculture, with its ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share. I've seen firsthand how adaptable and responsive it can be in all contexts, from urban to rural, from refugee camps to suburbs. It helps people make sense of what's happening around them and to learn accessible design tools to shape their habitat positively and to contribute to cultural and ecological regeneration. This is why I've created the Permaculture Educators Program, to help thousands of people to become permaculture teachers everywhere through an interactive online dual certificate of permaculture design and teaching. We sponsor global PERMAYOUTH programs, women's self-help groups in the Global South, and teens in refugee camps. So anyway, this podcast is sponsored by the Permaculture Education Institute and our Permaculture Educators Program. If you'd like to find more about permaculture, I've created a 4-part permaculture video series to explain what permaculture is and also how you can make it your livelihood as well as your way of life. We'd love to invite you to join our wonderfully inspiring, friendly and supportive global learning community. So I welcome you to share each of these conversations, and I'd also like to suggest you create a local conversation circle to explore the ideas shared in each show and discuss together how this makes sense in your local community and environment. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I meet and speak with you today, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. This week you're in for a treat on Sense Making in a Changing World podcast. Come with me on a walk and talk through the iconic Findhorn community in Scotland with the Findhorn College permaculture teacher Maria Cooper, exploring how permaculture is applied, and discover a beautiful permaculture garden and life philosophy at the home of Craig Gibsone, an elder of the Findhorn community. Permaculture here is love in action. Both Maria and Craig shared deep insights throughout this walk and talk about living a permaculture way of life and of growing abundance in a cool climate and having fresh food year-round. Originally from Australia, Craig has been a central figure in the development of permaculture and Ecovillage education at Findhorn and has lived at Findhorn for 50 years. Maria moved more recently to Findhorn, and she's deeply involved in the transition and permaculture movements locally and internationally, and runs now the permaculture design courses and Ecovillage design education programs at Findhorn. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Maria and Craig, exploring what is permaculture at the Findhorn community in Scotland. Hi, it's Morag from Our Permaculture Life and the Permaculture Education Institute, and I'm here at the Findhorn community in Scotland with Maria Cooper. And Maria has been here for some time, and she's actually recently bought into the community. But the reason why I really wanted to speak with her is because Maria is living at the moment in one of the more established permaculture gardens that exist here in the community, and she is also part of the teaching team, teaching permaculture. So I come with a few questions for Maria, and we could or could not go in those directions. It doesn't really matter. But what I do want to ask Maria was, what does permaculture mean in the context of Findhorn in this community? How permaculture kind of manifests in terms of education here within the community, and maybe any particular ways in which you teach it, because one of the things that I do a lot of is mentoring permaculture teachers, and so I'm always fascinated by ways of teaching and approaches to teaching that relate to different communities and different groups. So that's kind of one. And then the other thing is the very practical thing about what does permaculture look like in this cool part of Scotland. So let's kind of take a wander up and so maybe first just and also, what is it that drew you to permaculture in the first instance?
Oh, that's a good place to start. Because I found permaculture just by accident.
Right.
In terms of, I was just looking to volunteer on a farm somewhere, and I happened to come to a permaculture place, and I thought that was normal farming. So I was really lucky, because actually my background, both my parents are academics, and I didn't really grow up with any form of nature connection or practices where we would grow any food.
Where did you grow up?
In Sweden.
In Sweden, right.
Yeah. So I came at it from quite an ideological perspective, I guess, that I studied politics, and I wanted to find some form of solutions that would work for people on a local level, that also weren't imposing a specific type of theory or framework, or I was very much into post-colonialism at the time. Right. So how can we find ways that people can express themselves and design their local environment without it being like an imposed structure on them? Yeah. So that's how I came into permaculture. And for me now, it's very much an expression of life. And we're here at a conference, actually, Climate Change and Consciousness. And somebody yesterday said something great about permaculturists. She said, they're fundamentally unreasonable.
No, I was shocked when she said that. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, what's she going to say? Is that going to kind of shatter my world? But then she went on, and I went,
yeah,
fantastic.
So her point was sort of that these people, permaculturists, if you want, don't accept the status quo as the only way it can be, and that we can create our reality around us. Yeah. And for me, that's so important. And I grow my own food, and I have a permaculture garden, and that sense of connection with the land and of co-creating my body and my brain and the energy that flows through me with the environment I'm in and seeing and sensing feels extremely important. And also somehow it's the only thing, according to my conscience, that I can also feel is okay to teach others, in terms of how they relate with their land.
So why is that? Just maybe stop and talk about that for a minute, because I think that's a really important point.
Because there's so much emphasis on observation, on listening to, if it's a land-based project, but also here in Findhorn we're a spiritual community, so it's going within and listening to whatever our intuition is saying, whatever the group setting is saying, what the energy of the group is saying, and being informed by that, rather than imposing some form of solution that somebody developed out there that was the right thing.
It's not one thing. It's not a recipe. It's kind of it's an approach. It's a philosophy. It's an ethic, and it looks different wherever you are, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. I love how we're walking through an eco-village and all we see is cars.
We're going to get to the garden soon. I just thought it would be a nice thing to actually, on our journey, to have this conversation, and then we arrive and we talk more practically. So I think that's a really important point about permaculture and teaching it, because often I've heard, different people, there's the bikes. See, there are bikes too. and there's the other thing that I really like about here, that's something that my son noticed too, was the electric car sharing. And so hopefully we'll get a chance to do a bit of an exploration of some of those things as well.
Yeah, in terms of teaching permaculture.
The idea, sometimes there's criticism about teaching permaculture in, places like Africa or in various communities, and it's another form of colonialism, as you're saying. So, my approach has been to not necessarily teach in those places, but to support and mentor teachers that are from those places. And that's kind of where I feel, because it is that contextualizes it. And as we heard this morning, all the projects in there from the various Indigenous communities and people from different parts of the world, they're kind of all at the foundation of them. They all said permaculture is what they needed, and I felt I was really taken by that, because it's something that is so very practical and so very grounded, but so central in an approach to actually address what people actually really do fundamentally need in so many different places, whether you're in the middle of New York or whether you're in Senegal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And there's Vandana Shiva was another speaker at the conference here, and she talked about our fossilized mind, or our fossil fuel mindset that we have gotten into, and fundamentally it's something about a disconnect between our lifestyle and the land around us, and that we have we live in theories and in our brains, and actually but what happens when we start to become a bit more practical in our everyday life. And it doesn't have to be growing your own food, but just engaging with the environment around us somehow, and noticing that we are part of it, and interacting with it. And I seriously believe it changes our minds. And it's not necessarily teaching as go out and everybody has to mulch in exactly the same way. Not at all. It's much more about the attitude of permaculture that I love, of just being there, sensing what is it that wants to come through life in this particular place, and being able to work with it.
A car wants to come through at this particular moment.
No, parking there.
That's right. That's absolutely true. So we're about to enter into your... so before we go into your garden area, maybe a little bit about here at Findhorn, which is a very established community. It's been here for a long time and didn't start out as an eco-village, but has emerged into one, I think. Would you say that?
Or maybe almost something about eco-villages have emerged out of it as well, or there's been some form of confluence. So it's a funny community in the sense that it's really an unintentional community rather than an intentional community. And it started with the founders coming to a caravan park and living here and gardening because they didn't have any jobs and wanted to grow their food. And they had very strong spiritual practices and would live their lives and garden according to the guidance that they received in meditation and in a mindful lifestyle. And they were extremely successful in growing vegetables. And also there was some form of connection with, some people called it God, some people called it something bigger than themselves that they were trying to manifest here. And it attracted a lot of people. So very organically it started to grow, and we are still quite a confusing community in that there are probably about 40 or 50 different organizations here.
So how many people living here all up, do you think?
That's really hard to say as well. Probably maybe about 400 people living here in the park, so the old caravan park. And there are different ways that people own their homes or not, and there are different organizations that have some of the buildings.
And there's co-housing and all sorts of things.
There are all kinds of things. But then there are so many people who are in our bioregion because of us and live in the Findhorn village, which we actually stole our name from, and the neighbouring villages and the local town. And we have another campus in town, clearly, which was an old Victorian hotel. So part of our community lives there. So I don't know. I mean, I think there are thousands in the local area who are connected with us, but we can't really know.
And that's fascinating, isn't it? That it is not just a particular place defined by a particular boundary. That it's an idea. It's a concept, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And a set of relationships that are formed around particular actions, particular practices, particular way of being. So that's wonderful.
And there are so many people around the world who are part of some form of network of Findhorn and feel connected with Findhorn. And that's
I heard about Findhorn before I was 5 because I'm pretty sure my mum had the Findhorn book on the bookshelves from the day it was published. And I remember looking through this book and hearing magical stories. As a child, it was this magical place. And so when the first time I came to England, when I was 23, it was kind of like my sort of late gap year. Gap years weren't really the thing back then. So I was kind of like a late gap year. And I came to, there was 3 key places I wanted to come in the UK. One was Schumacher College, where I ended up staying for about a year. I was meant to be there for 5 weeks. And then here, and I think the Centre of Alternative Technology, really practical stuff. And so it's kind of been an inspiration since then, and I've been involved in eco-villages and permaculture ever since that time, partly of coming here. So I'm interested to know, that wasn't the beginning of this place, not like Crystal Waters. Crystal Waters was founded on the principles and ethics of permaculture. And that's where I live now. It's an eco-village based on permaculture principles in Australia. Where did permaculture come to meet Findhorn?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there was this spiritual impulse that really was part of the creation of the community. One of the core principles, I guess, in that is co-creating with nature. And somehow, very early on, it's recognized that nature has an intelligence that we can collaborate with, and we are part of it. And can we find that connection again? And for me, that is also permaculture. But at the time, there was no talk about it. And it's falling down.
We're having a microphone moment. Maybe we just put it on your sweater there. Lovely.
And then there was this impulse about what would a planetary village look like. So in the 80s, I believe, before I was born, so I'm not quite sure, but there was this idea of can this become a planetary village, as in we live in a way that makes sense for the whole planet. And a lot of ecological thinking came out of that, and the first building schools that we had here came from that impulse of how do we actually build in our village in a way that respects the planet. And out of that, the idea of eco-villages emerged, and we started realizing that there are lots of places around the world that are doing the same thing about trying to explore what is it to live in a sustainable or regenerative village consciously, and creating it for ourselves, and so that's where the eco-village-ness of the place came. But even now, I mean, there are people here who say, no, we're not an eco-village, we are first and foremost a spiritual community. And some people here say this is completely a permaculture settlement, in terms of all of our renewable energies and the way we built our houses and the way we collaborate. We have our local currency. All of that, yes, is permaculture. And others say, absolutely not. We are not permaculture.
It's interesting. It's a different frame of reference, isn't it?
And in the end, I have to admit that permaculture is one language to describe something that we're trying to do. And there are so many different languages. And it's okay. And somehow the diversity of this place makes us resilient. So we're not just attached to the permaculture paradigm, and we bring in people who have never heard about permaculture. We can learn from them something, and in the end, paradoxically for me, that is permaculture. So anyway,
So we've now arrived. Can we just do a little bit of a turnaround here, because we're in an interesting part of Findhorn at the moment. Can you tell us a little bit about this little section of Findhorn?
So this is the barrel houses. They're not actually barrels. The official name is whiskey vats, but they were used in the whiskey distilling industry,
which is very tied to the economy around here.
Yeah. So in local distilleries, and they're part of the process, and the alcohol is stored in these big tons during the distilling. And there was a moment when Roger, who lives in this barrel here that we're just behind us, he was visiting a cooperage, so where these were just in store because they'd been replaced by stainless steel vats. A cooperage.
A cooperage.
Yeah.
It's got to do with Cooper.
Yeah, so a cooper is somebody
who's from the ancient tradition of whiskey.
I like to think so, No, but these people who made barrels.
Yeah, okay, right.
And so he was there looking for some wood, and they said, oh, by the way, we have these big vats. And Roger had the brilliant idea that, I could actually live in one.
Yeah.
So they became the kind of tiny house
expression.
expression.
Turn around and see.
Yeah, so this is where I live in here.
Yeah.
In this one. So we might go in and have a look.
Sure, let's do that. Okay. Now, how long have you been living in a barrel house?
About 2.5 years, or
Right.
something like that. So I rent a room from Craig, who's one of the... He calls himself a feral elder of the community.
And he's from Australia.
He's from Australia.
Originally, but been here a very long time, I
He's
understand.
about 50 years.
50 years, is it? Has it been going for 59 years, has it, this place?
Since 62. So whatever.
Okay, whatever that is.
Whatever that becomes. But he's... he calls himself a feral elder, and he's also a bush gardener, is what he says. And I thought he was doing interesting things in terms of permaculture. So I asked him if I could move into his house and do his garden.
Yeah, great. And so you teach together the permaculture courses?
Yeah, with another person, Gabrielle.
Gabrielle, that's right. I did meet her. She's lives in another co-housing further up.
Just around here.
I accidentally went to her house. I was looking for a bike for Monty, my 6-year-old, and we were told that someone up there had it, and we went to the wrong house, but it was actually the right house because I got to meet her.
Oh, great.
That was wonderful. And another thing that happened while I was looking for a bike for Monty, I came across someone who said, oh, no worries, I'll put it out through the internal network that connects all the mothers. And then I was walking, 5 minutes later, I was walking down the street, and someone said, are you the lady who's looking for a little bike? And so 5 minutes, great networking. It was wonderful. Yeah. So I'm going to follow you in here. We are connected with microphones, but I think we can kind of manage to go through the gates together.
Get caught in the apple blossom.
Yeah. That's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you want to go into the house, or should we go into the garden?
Should we go through the garden first? Or we can go through the house. I think
it would be good to go through here, and then we'll come into the...
So maybe actually if I do go first, because then you're behind me, you can explain things.
Okay, so here we're coming into the house. Oh,
sorry.
Well, this barrel house has expanded quite a lot since it was first built. So the original barrel is up here, and then we have washing hanging in the ceiling.
Can we go up the stairs?
We could go up the stairs. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's beautiful.
Yes, that's a reciprocal frame roof. That's, ironically held up by gravity somehow.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? With the beautiful skylight at the top.
Yeah. And so that's the bed up there as well.
Yeah.
And the front door was over there. I don't know if you will be able to find it. That's it there.
There we go. There's the front door.
Yeah. And so under the bed, there's just some storage, like a closet and a toilet and shower.
Yeah, so it's very... I'll just do a little
we can
spin around.
Yeah.
So this was the original whiskey vat house.
Yeah. So here under the washing, those were the doors out to the garden.
Yeah, okay.
And then there was a little kitchen over there.
Yeah.
And then this is the living room.
Yeah.
But
very, very compact.
Yeah.
Simple housing, which is fantastic. And I think this whole idea of having tiny houses And expanding houses, like houses that can be adapted over time. I live in a expanded house that I built module by module, and each of the modules is connected by a little walkway, which means that they can also be separated again, which means that, say when Maya or Hugh get older and say, I'd like to have an apartment, we can kind of split it up a bit, which could be interesting. Yeah. Or someone else. It doesn't have to be the kids. I don't have to assume that they're going to stay there, although they've already told me which bits they are having. So shall we walk through to a narrow section? I'll try not to get attached to a chair this time on the way through.
Yeah.
So this bit here is now the kitchen and dining area.
So Craig expanded his house as his family grew. He had 2 kids, and he's actually similar to what you're describing. We have about 7 external doors, I think. So each bedroom has an external door, so that you have your independence a bit.
Yeah, nice. Very nice.
That's really nice.
And that's how you can live in your space as well.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So it works really well. So, and this is our shared kitchen space, and we have a wood stove and bring in all of our own wood. And
I love the nice yellow roof. That's the colour of my walls at home.
Yeah. Oh, it's great and bright. And there's a solar tube here, because something that does happen when you sort of expand your house like that is that here at some point there was south-facing windows where we're just standing. Yeah. But since Craig built yet another bedroom and also a studio upstairs, we lost that part of the kitchen.
Yeah, right.
So this became a bit cave-like, so we put in this tube.
And it's so effective. It's so beautiful, isn't it?
It's just reflecting the sunlight outside.
So it brings some light directly into the table here, and you can see just how much brightness there is here. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And then you've got bedrooms down in that way. Mm-hmm. Which way should we go from here? Outside?
Well, I see Craig having lunch there. Shall we go and see if he likes to be on camera?
I'll follow you.
You can get a shot of our wine cellar / storage on the way if you want.
Whoopsie. Sorry. Let me see.
Hi.
Hello. I'm wondering if you might join us. You're having lunch.
You just carry on. Maria, I'll just be sitting here.
Okay, beautiful. We've just been out the front, through the main house, and thought we'd come out to the garden and thank you.
So we make all of our own wine and jams and chutneys and ferments, and it's all a mix of everything and quite chaotic. And
so what do you make your wines from?
Mostly fruit
wines.
Like black currants, raspberries, plums, cherries. We also, in our living machine, the biological wastewater treatment plant that we have here in the community, we have a big grape vine. So we actually make some grape wine as well, which is nice.
And then the ferments that you've got?
They're mostly different kinds of sauerkraut from our cabbages, but also lacto-fermenting Jerusalem artichokes. It's the best way, I think, to eat Jerusalem artichokes.
Wow.
And they're not so farty then either.
That's always very important, isn't it?
It's about the pre-digestion of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just going to go up the stairs.
You're going first?
Yeah, I'll just turn the camera around so we can start to see that this is the rooftop up here. We were actually walking on the roof the other day.
Oh yeah, we could go up.
So what's the roof made of, and why did you choose that material?
Craig?
It's copper, because of the whiskey industry.
We need to get nice and close with the microphone.
Okay, well you should answer. Oh, careful,
Yeah, I see your drink.
It's copper because the whiskey barrel comes from the whiskey industry, and if you go into the things, there's these big copper stills.
Yeah.
So we thought we would emulate that. It was cheap once, but it's no longer cheap.
Yeah, I know.
But the other part of the roof is corrugated iron.
It's very Australian made, isn't it?
No, no worries. Yeah, I had to have a corrugated roof.
Yeah.
Otherwise I can't go to sleep at night. I've got to hear the rain on the roof.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. There's something very special about that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you collect the water for drinking out off these roofs as well?
Yeah, right there. See that tank over there?
Oh, yeah, I do now.
That goes into the kitchen, and all of our domestic water, drinking and cooking water comes off that.
Yes, you just have a tap in the kitchen.
And that size is enough for your...
Because it's Scotland. It rains.
It rains all the time, of course. Here's me thinking, I've got 50,000 litres off my roofs at home.
Yeah, it's the same on the farm. We had 6 months without water.
Yeah. So it's a different design criteria.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why I wanted to come to your garden, because the kinds of things that we think about in the subtropics or in Australia, even in sort of Melbourne or Sydney, is very different from up here in Scotland. So what are the specifics about doing permaculture here that you've both worked out to be really very useful?
Well, I mean, just for instance, behind us here, Maria will take you in the shed here, there's my wood supply. I go through 8 tons of wood, which I cut and haul and split because we heat 8 months of the year with wood to keep this baby going. So that's a big, we don't have to worry about that kind of heating in Australia.
No, not at all. Just a tiny bit.
Our biggest challenge up here is that in the wintertime, the sun rises just over there and sets just over here. It goes 4 hours of sunlight. In the summertime right now, soon, the sun will be setting over there somewhere in the north and rising and it's 18 hours of sunlight.
Yeah.
So we get this incredible change of climate.
So 4 hours of sunlight.
Yes.
He's exaggerating a little bit.
Some days none at all. Let's exaggerate. I mean, literally, some days no sunshine at all, other than just grey cloud with a 6-hour blip above the horizon. Anyway.
And what's your garden look like at that time?
It looks like Desolation Row.
Yeah.
I don't agree. Because the other thing here, because we're close to the sea, is that we don't get that heavy frosts. So we can actually keep things going through the winter.
So which things feed you through the winter?
So we keep all of our parsnips and carrots and potatoes in the ground.
Yep.
So we're still harvesting potatoes from last year. Yeah. And all of our greens, kales, broccolis, Brussels sprouts, we're still harvesting that end of April, which is just crazy. This is supposed to be our hungry gap time. So
you're eating the leaves of the broccolis and things as well?
Yeah. Everything.
And the flowers.
Yeah, nice.
Everything's going to flower right now, and they're fantastic to eat.
I noticed we've been eating lots of those, the purple broccolis. Is that a particular one that works better up here, or I've just noticed that everyone's been using it, or is it just
purple sprouting seems to be more resilient than the kind of head ones, and you can get several crops out of them, which is what we like. And we have quite a few kales and sort of broccoli mixes that just self-seed around the garden. And, they're not the pure one that we first planted at one point. They're cross-pollinated, but they're still really tasty. And the leaves, we put in wild salads.
Beautiful. And
the flowers now are delicious.
So the ragged jack is another wild, crazy Russian kale. It's all over the place.
Yeah, great.
And nettles. Don't forget the nettles.
Of course. I mean,
this is nettle time.
And also wild garlic and all sorts of things. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So, I see in your garden something that I relate to a lot in terms of a garden that is diverse, perennial, self-seeding, mixed. It's like an ecological system that's operating in and of itself. But it's very different from many of the kind of organic gardens that you see around Scotland and England, which are very much still rows and beds and lots of open space without anything growing in them. And so how do you encourage people to this way of growing food here? Because it seems to be such an entrenched mindset about that type of way of growing. So, because I've heard stuff think, well, you have to give things space to get light. You can't have mulch because the soil gets,
or the slugs get in.
Yeah, slugs. So there's lots of reasons that I'm hearing why all of the things that you're doing could not work, but yet I see around me that they're working beautifully.
Well, first of all, the chickens are feral. They're throughout the garden. So we don't, like Bill said, what is it? Slug deficiency. Slug problem, duck deficiency.
Yeah.
Well, we have the same with chickens. The chickens do all of that. They clean up a lot of the weeds. They scavenge. And so that's a key part of getting this thing going. And to give up control.
That's a really
Because-
interesting thing.
And that's where the spiritual element again comes in. That's what I see in my gardening. That is so much more about my inner process and wanting to be in control of something. And can I consciously let go of that and let nature do whatever is going to happen there?
And trusting in nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, in Findhorn, a lot of people talk about working with the nature spirits, whereas actually what I do, and Maria, I think we talk about working with the spirit of nature.
Nice.
Because there's this anthropomorphication of spiritual so-called entities that are floating through your garden everywhere, whereas actually it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's in all, what's a rainforest?
Yeah.
It's a living being.
Yeah. And the soil is a real,
Yeah.
soil is a mind.
But I think in terms of how to tell people that it works, or that because we have many people here say, oh, your garden looks so messy, and what, you use cardboard and disaster. And it's something about just being inviting and getting people to come in and to share our surplus.
Yeah.
And
Because I can imagine you would have an enormous amount of surplus.
we have,
here.
Give it
And
away.
Yeah.
so we give a lot away, and we also, with all the programs that come through, our first teaching method is to just take them out into the garden and harvest things and eat things and make teas and just see the diversity of it all and start appreciating it, and that awakens the interest to then start learning the methods.
And I think what you just said that very simply too, just doing different things like making tea straight from your garden and using it in a different way, as opposed to it simply being, your carrots and potatoes and cabbages, which is the concept, general concept of what a garden is in a cool climate. I'm gathering.
The other part that I like too is that, everybody's looking for woofers and volunteers in their garden all the time. And actually, I look for the plants that are the volunteers.
Yes, that's
the
right.
garden is full of plants. They've all planted themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, get on with it. But people say, what can you do with that thing over there, that alkanet? And I say, well, it's great for compost. It's beautiful for bees.
Yeah.
And the chickens eat it in the winter. But they say, but it'll run out of control. I said, well, is it? It is not. And the two here, we can do a lot of mixture. You can see that all the fruit trees, when you go down through it, there's 15 different fruit trees mixed up with vegetables.
Yeah.
But they're not in designated areas.
Yeah.
So it's letting it be, and trying to, a natural system doesn't have that kind of order.
No, that's right.
But I make holes in it everywhere, or so does Maria too. We plant little patches.
Yeah, that's kind of like what happens in nature, isn't it? Like something dies, and then to create that new annual little spot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the first things that come up, and it moves and shifts, and
And if we have little patches all over the place, the butterflies will attack one patch of brassicas, but they'll leave the other one alone.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
actually, that's there. That's fair shares.
Yeah.
Now, how can the garden be shared with all the other species as well as humans? But you have to let go of your mindset, because gardening magazines, to me, they're like some type of fashion magazine where you can't achieve that sort of standard of stuff.
Not without an enormous amount of input and resources. So kind of that concept from permaculture, which is about yield, gets blown out of proportion there, because it's only when you step back so much and allow nature to do most of the work that you do get that level of yield, isn't it?
Yeah, it is unlimited yield. Everything has got a function.
Yeah.
And I think a lot with Maria, myself, and another good friend, at the different times of the year, so many of the so-called weeds, those naughty plants, are actually medicinal.
Yeah.
They're cleansers, they're purifiers, and it's staggering.
Yeah.
People come here to harvest them at the right time of the year, but they won't let them be in their gardens.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, another thing I've noticed is people ask me a lot about yield, about, well, how much produce do you grow in your garden, so that they can measure whether one technique's better than another. And I've never measured it. I can't measure it, because I pick a leaf from this, I pick a leaf from that, and it keeps growing, and it's going for years, and it self-seeds. One plant has 10,000 seeds which spread out, and I give them away, and who knows how many more plants have come. And so I find that a little bit challenging, the measuring side. And I don't.
Well, we measure by
do
saying,
measure.
sitting down at a meal and saying, hey, 80%.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's how we measure every day. It's that type of measurement. I'm not going to put it on a scale and I made this amount of money or whatever it might be. It's constantly feeding me and feeding friends and feeding chickens and feeding birds, and it goes on and on.
So you both teach permaculture here together, and do you have courses, but you also have people coming and is it part of the experience weeks as well here?
If you're lucky enough to have one of us as your focalizers, as facilitators. But we also, people randomly come through, and we're a land centre, so it's
Do you want to say something about the land centres? Because that's a new thing.
Yeah, so the Permaculture Association here in the UK, they have a network, so it's, if I can remember, land activity and network demonstration centres, or something like that. Yeah. Learning instead of land, sorry. And so we try to be open and just let people come through if they're interested in permaculture or in this lifestyle. And we give tours, and mostly it's just sort of sitting down and having a cup of tea together and getting to know one another a bit.
Yeah, great.
And that's a lot of our teaching, at least what I'm picking up from Craig, is around just being authentic and yourself, and being open for a conversation. Here come some chickens, I want some food. If I can, with the microphone, I'm going to open that pot there.
You can. And I can continue because I've got a mic, but here comes the chicken. Maybe. We've got some peas. We'll see if they like them from the community centre. I estimate approximately 600 to 700 people are coming through this place a year.
I think that's a lot. That's great. Yeah.
Constant.
Yeah.
And it's not so much teaching from my perspective, it's just experience. I mean, this looks a bit cluttered and messy out here. But I've had the home group from the conference here twice this week. And they love the space because these birds turn up. And it's sort of, they relax. And particularly with the house too. The house it's a permaculture house. It's built out of waste. And it's comfortable and cozy. And people walk in and go, instead of having, do I take my shoes off, or can I go here, or can I go there?
I think, and I think too, just the simple thing about opening up your home space. You know that it is. This is how I live. This is real, and it works, and I love it, and this is the different systems I use. If people want to know the technical stuff, this is my approach. If they want to know the philosophical approach, and they can kind of see it all just being, and you're being in it, and relaxing into it, and I think people will come in and go, I'd like a bit of that kind of.
Here it looks like a mess, but there's a pizza oven in there, and there's a grill there, and very soon this is the kitchen for the summer.
Lovely.
But just that thing about inviting people into our home and our everyday lives, and it's also then it's not imposing so much. This is how you have to do permaculture. It's more, I'm here to share my approach and take from it what you will. And that's sort of what I'm picking up more and more, I think, is that meta skill of being able to be so grounded and authentic, and just offering something and not necessarily saying that it must be taught in this specific way or using these words, but it's actually coming from me, inside of me, and my truth. And
also, I guess too, that I know your place has been here for a long time and it's quite well developed, but I'm sure you showed people as you're in process as well.
Oh no, but I built this place with people. I built the whole garden because the people come, and so I say pick this up and carry this over there, and when we have a course, we'll do a little bit of ecological building, we'll do a bit of composting, we'll do a bit of eating, we'll have a full sort of featured experience of what that's like. And people say again, but like you said, how much food do you produce? I say, I'm not sure, I just eat it every day. But how much time do you spend in the garden? And I go, I don't know. I don't calculate how much time I spend in the garden. When I have a group, we go through the garden and work. And the garden looks after itself if I'm not there. So it's not, oh my goodness, I have to go again. Or, oh no, I have to go to work in the garden. It's a joy to go out there and just wander through it. And I think Bill's thing I love, the designer becomes a recliner.
Yeah.
You know, and that is the most important part. Where
and it
is
doesn't
it?
take that long, really, does it?
Yeah, we have this other little thing that we throw in. If it's not fun, it's not sustainable. So if you're struggling with a garden and it's not fun, then don't do it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
find something that's enjoyable.
Yeah,
But the other part of garden can be great fun,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
particularly for kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's the attitude thing coming in
Mm.
again. Like, how do you teach an attitude? You can't. You can just embody it and invite
Yes.
people into
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad you've shared that, because a lot of people who watch these films are in the process of becoming permaculture teachers themselves or journeying towards that, and to know that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in a finished centre, or you don't have to have a finished project, but the process of involving people on your journey and sharing with them what you know, and it doesn't have to be a whole full permaculture design course or anything. It's just sharing your experience of living in this way, whatever it is that you feel you're able to share.
And the most important for me is to show people what doesn't work, or which is a bit of work in process, possibly.
Yeah.
And it's never complete.
Yeah,
Don't
and to share the mistakes too.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So many mistakes.
Yeah, but I'm okay. As I build the house, part of it's falling down. That's okay. It doesn't have to be finished.
No, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't get to introduce you properly to the film. So this is Craig Gisborne.
G'day.
Where did you grow up? I know you grew up in Australia, but
I grew up in the southwest of Australia on a small isolated farm.
right.
No electricity, no septic tank. I mean, all of that stuff. No modern facilities.
So how did you end up in Findhorn from there?
The classic Australian thing, you have to go overseas to grow up type of thing.
Yeah.
So I came to Europe as a raw redneck Australian, really, and was blown away because I realised I wasn't British. I know I'm Australian, but what is Australian?
Yeah, no, that's a big question.
What's my culture? So I was looking for my culture, and lucky I became a hippie. That was one of the best. And from there, I contracted cancer early on, and I went and cured myself by going into meditative retreats. And then in that process, I came to Findhorn, and they had the mindset here, heart.
Yeah.
This is good, but I mean, this is the journey.
Yeah.
And I think it's that relationship with the garden in that same thing. I'm not going at it from here. I'm going at it from here, and I'm reaching out to it. So, I'm still a child at heart in that context.
And you've been here for how many years now?
50.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And permaculture is only... Well, I look at Findhorn as a large settlement, and it's full of permaculture features, from all of the windmills and the waste treatment plants and the ecological houses and some forms of gardening. So you can see it there, but most people don't. But there's very, very little permaculture being practiced in here. Again, because we don't like to name what we are. We're spiritual, but that's... And for me, permaculture is a spiritual path, because I'm not sure where it came from, but it's all about observation. Bill or whoever it is said, you've got to observe the land. But the spiritual things, you've got to observe yourself. What am I feeling? What am I projecting? Do I enjoy it or don't I enjoy it? Do I like this person? Do I don't like this person? And that's the biggest test. Anyway, here I am.
Thank you so much for opening your garden and your and your heart and your lunchtime with us.
Still at it.
Well, shall we
Maria,
continue to wander through?
Yeah, we can wander
Go through the jungle.
Great, thank you. All right, I'll leave you to it.
That's a good question. Findhorn, garden or jungle?
Aha, very good question. Let's go and find out. Okay, I'll come this way.
So we'll go through here.
Right. I might just go ahead so you can come up with it. You can see the beautiful house behind. We should also do a bit of a time check, because we also do need to get back to the conference, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Do you have a...
It's 2:05 already.
Oh, is it? Okay. Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful, just walking through the space already.
Yes, maybe we say something somewhere around here.
Yeah.
Can you see something? Yeah. So here, a lot of the garden is fruit trees, interspersed with perennial vegetables. This is cardoon.
I've learned about cardoon since I've been here, and I think I'm going to have to.
They're great.
Bring it into my system.
There's a little ladybird. And also we use these as medicine because they're great bitters, the leaves, for making digestive infusions. And so a lot of our garden is around our fruit trees, and we plant annuals or perennials under them and around them, and a lot of self-seeding herbs and wild greens. And
what are the main self-seeding type of vegetables that you?
So a lot of different kinds of kale and broccolis.
Yeah.
What you see here a lot is sweet cicely.
Yep.
That comes up all over the place, and Jack in the Hedge, obviously, and we have a lot of lovely nettles and ground elder and these sort of greens that could be annoying, but actually they're great in this hungry gap, and we make soups and they're actually fantastic. And I try to sort of collaborate with the fruit trees a lot, and I grow all my runner beans up plum trees, for example, and that helps both the beans and the plums. So that's the sort of thing I've started to do. Here's the pond.
Tell us what's going on here.
So the pond obviously is habitat for lots of frogs and toads and newts, and the chickens drink out of it.
Do you have any food growing in there, or is it mostly as a habitat?
It's mostly as a habitat. There was at some point some watercress somewhere, but I think it's decided to do something else.
As things do.
But there are the raspberries around, and
it's beautiful.
And for me, the exciting thing about the garden as well is about how do I live in it. So we're just coming up here it's still covered right now, but there's my bathtub.
I'll turn around here so I can see that. Okay, so that's your window.
Yeah.
And that's your bathroom. And when you look out through the bathroom, you can see your bath.
And it was just, it's this thing about responding to change in some form of creative way. And we had to take out the bathtub from the bathroom because there was a leak and the wood was rotting. So I just thought, okay, but it's actually really nice to have baths outside. So I'll just put it in the garden instead.
Oh, nice.
And I've got it hooked up to the hot water just in the bathroom. So I can actually turn on the tap here and have a hot bath. And it's just being in the garden in that way, as in it's nourishing me on a personal level. And there's raspberries growing here, so I can lie in my bathtub eating raspberries, just chilling, and it becomes my sort of self-nurturing place. It's not just a place where I have to go and grow my food.
That's right.
So I go to relax in my garden and to hang out, and obviously that gives me that connection as well, and I'm much happier being in the garden then.
And it's a beautiful garden. I mean, I don't know if you can see from this picture, but behind us is just this beautiful flowering, lush green abundance. And it just seems so much food growing in this garden, and beautiful, healthy plants that don't seem to be at all bug-eaten or bothered. There's so much diversity in here, and it has its own balance. And I was just wondering what's going on in this geodesic dome, actually.
So, this dome was built just as an experiment, really, because I thought it was fun to play around with the calculations. So for Craig's birthday one year, again, because if it's not fun, it's not sustainable. So I brought together lots of people who like Craig and he likes them, and we did a surprise work project for him.
Fantastic.
And we built this dome out of hazel that's been growing in the garden. And I found some old plastic pipe that we made the connectors out of.
Excellent.
And I cover it in the summer with plastic, and I grow sweet corn, and last year I grew quinoa in there, and just experiment a bit.
Very nice.
Because what we do need here is quite a lot of protected growing space for those a bit more sensitive species.
Is this your garden down here too?
So I mean, we've only gone through a little bit of that work. There's a lot more.
Oh, far out. Okay. And I know that there was even more, but that became part of a new co-housing project.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh wow, it just keeps going
So-
and going.
It keeps going.
All right, so just as we're walking through it, because I know we do need to get back to the conference, but as we're walking, just want to tell us what's going
here
on.
we can see a compost toilet. Because I also grew up in Sweden, this is a big part of my culture. Obviously.
Is it?
Yeah.
Tell
compost
me,
toilets.
what do you mean?
Well,
Compost toilets are part of your culture?
it's-
Really?
Yeah, in Sweden,
know that.
many families have some form of summer home in the mountains
Yeah.
or on the coast, and they're often still quite sort of cut off.
Yeah.
And they would still have compost toilets,
And so
especially when I was
what
growing
type
up.
of compost toilet is
This
this?
is really simple. So one thing I'm learning here is that there's, rather than get it perfect the first time
Yeah.
and just wait years in order to get anything done,
Yeah.
I'm just starting to do things
Okay.
slowly,
Yeah.
and then I refine them as I go along. Because I thought it was important to have a compost toilet to demonstrate
Yeah.
the kind of recycling of nutrients and a closed loop system.
Yeah.
So this is basically a toilet seat, and under a toilet seat there's a bucket,
Right.
and that's it.
And the
it's-
bucket.
and we empty
Yes.
it onto the compost, and
Yeah.
we compost it for a couple of years, and then it goes onto shrubs and trees. And,
Oh, great. Simple.
and it's so simple.
And in Sweden, what's the type of compost toilet that
Oh,
gets
there's
used?
so many different ones.
Mostly just a big hole in the ground and then plant a tree on top? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And here, obviously, there are lots of black currant bushes, red currants.
Beautiful.
Over there, that's the chicken shack.
Hang on, I better go back around again without getting people dizzy.
Yeah.
Here we go. Wow. Okay, so over this way here.
Yeah, there's
There's the
chicken
chicken
shacks
house.
behind all that kind of rubble of pots and
Yeah.
interesting things you
Yeah.
can use in the garden. So the chickens run very free. So we
And so
do
how do
have
you manage that with
Yeah. we have lots of fences,
Okay.
and they're
Oh,
to
I
keep
see
the
it.
chickens out rather
Yeah.
than to keep them in.
Yeah.
Because somehow chickens have rights too, and it's really interesting. Oh, we've gone past the greenhouse, by the way. Do you want to see the greenhouse?
Yeah, sure, let's do that.
It's really interesting to notice how the chickens self-regulate in
Yeah.
their own sort of social context,
Yeah.
and that's happens when they are just free and roaming. Some neighbors get a bit pissed off, I think. I'm
So-
not sure. Here's
So
our
this is
greenhouse.
why we have fences around
Yeah.
here to keep the chickens in your garden.
No. To keep them out of our vegetable
Oh
patches.
no, I mean the chicken. This next building over there
Uh-huh.
is neighbours, so there's
Yeah.
that's keeping the chickens on this side. Or
No, it's no. The chickens go out and they
Oh,
go
the chicken-
out into the
oh,
fields,
okay.
and they raid people's gardens
Okay,
and
right.
bird feeders.
Yes.
But
All right, so
it's
here-
mostly for deer, actually. because we do have deer.
Right.
So here is our
Okay, I'm
greenhouse.
trying to see in through here.
So that's our winter greens that are going to flower now. So
Yeah.
this is it's productive all year round.
Those beautiful
And
red mustard spinaches.
yeah,
kales,
and a lot of it
grapes.
self-seeds again, and some of it I've
Lettuces.
sown. And we've got really healthy lettuces all year round. And, we always have fresh salad. And soon we'll have to start planting tomatoes in amongst all of this.
Okay. Yeah.
And then as the tomatoes grow and we harvest, we cut off the branches at the bottom of
Yeah.
the stem and start growing next year's winter greens
Yeah.
under.
Okay. Great.
And-
So it just keeps going,
It keeps going.
and you keep nourishing the soil with the
Yeah.
compost.
Compost and manure. We have very sandy soil.
Yeah.
We're basically on sand. So
But
several
look at-
times a year we add
at the-
compost.
Look at the this plant here. What is this particular one here? Lovage.
This is an older form of celery.
Yeah.
And it
It's just spectacular. It is huge. And,
yeah.
and the soil looks amazing.
Yeah.
From coming
Yeah.
from sand. So has Craig hasn't always been here. He hasn't spent 50 years on this site. How long is
No.
this site?
Well, what we're seeing here
Yeah.
is about 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
So because there was a building project next to us, this was all flattened, compacted, like a dirt road,
And
basically.
you wouldn't even
And
begin to imagine that now by the
Yeah.
absolute lusciousness of the growth.
And it's basically just adding compost several times a year.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of sheet mulching
Yeah.
yeah. and letting things grow.
Yeah. And
So
so
a lot of companion planting is what I do too, which
Yeah.
I think helps, especially with all our brassicas.
yeah. And
Mm.
so I mean in terms of companion planting though, I mean
Yeah.
I've found in my garden that just because it is such a diversity, that the whole thing is one big companion
Yeah.
planting.
Yeah.
So what are the sorts of things that you've found work for you in this context, in and amongst your brassicas as companions?
Well, so what tends to happen for me is I propagate a few of my herbs, like rosemary and mint and things like that, and then I move them around a bit.
Yeah.
So, and chamomile actually. So here we have a lot of Brussels sprouts that are now going to flower. I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah.
And so I had chamomile growing all through them, as well as calendula, and it kind of just goes wild, which is great. And we'll see if it comes up next year or not, but that's all right because I have it propagated and I'll plant it out with my things the next time where I plant.
Looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
And that was that sign, danger permaculture. What's buried there?
No, there's some form of electric cable.
Oh,
we scratched out the cable and wrote permaculture instead.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So should we go this way or that way?
We can go out here.
Okay. All right.
Again, you can come in and out of the garden in many different ways.
Yeah. And so that's a fully mulched, fully planted, fully diverse, self-seeding, perennial polycultural garden.
Yeah.
That is.
But we do annuals as well. We do a few annuals.
Okay. Are they mostly self-seeding or are you mostly...
No, I propagate some as well because also we like that. And I'd say maybe sometimes we buy lemons from friends in Spain. And we buy avocados sometimes and ginger, but otherwise we don't buy any veg.
It's amazing.
So, and there are some things that I really like to eat. You know, I like leeks, for example. So I do propagate leeks.
Yeah.
And look, here are the chickens, by the way. They're in our neighbour's garden there.
And your neighbours, how do they feel about your chickens?
Well, my strategy is that I'm trying to grow as many flowers as I possibly can in the garden that look pretty. Yeah. And that seems to offset the chicken annoyance a little bit.
So how do the chickens annoy people? Do they... are they eating their food, or is it just that they scratch them, or they?
I think is sometimes they shit in people's gardens or their verandas.
Well, that's kind of a bit of a gift, really, though.
Well, on the veranda, not so much.
Oh no, that's true. That's true.
Well, I'm not sure. I think
I guess you could share with them some produce, eggs.
Yeah, of course. So we can share eggs, and we share a lot. We have so many greens. It never stops, so we do give a lot of things away.
So within your neighbourhood there, do you often have people over, or is it more broadly that people connect? Is it sort of like a little cluster thing, or is it?
Yeah, no, it's I think it's broader. Like, I mean, it's not, the community isn't that big, so it's like a 5-minute walk from one end to the other, really. But do you often eat together? I know you have the community meals, but in your own. Yeah, we invite friends over, and sometimes we have our neighbours come round, and that's also very, very nice. But people are here in so many different ways as well. So many people are traveling a lot, or aren't around. But we also have a neighbour who's really into biodynamics.
Yeah, great.
So we share, if we make preparations, we share, or she sometimes gives to us. And we have another neighbour who's really interested in birds. And we have a blackbird nesting just in between.
I saw that little sign. That's so beautiful.
So we feed our blackbird together. And
nice.
There's all of,
And you've like I said right at the very start, you've just recently bought.
I'm in the process
of buying. Yeah. So whereabouts is that, and what's the process of buying into a place like that?
How does that work? It's very interesting. So there's one part of the community that we have left to develop, and basically is at the moment is owned by a community company that was formed by community members, a development company. So and they are this company with shareholders, so they're selling off plots of land to individuals, and we have all kinds of criteria about as an individual buying the land, you need to make sure it's for community benefit, and there's still, people don't trust that process necessarily. There's a lot of emotions around it, and people are concerned that maybe it will be a development that they don't have control over.
So when you said it has to be for community development, that means you're buying a piece of land, but what you do on it has to be for community benefit. Is that what you mean?
Well, if you can prove that you will do something for community benefit, you will be prioritized, I think, in terms of buying. But you don't have to. You can also just buy it for yourself.
Yeah.
But if you can show that you're a committed community member,
Yeah.
then you will also have priority in terms of
So there's a selection
buying.
process.
Oh,
It's not just
definitely.
who's first in with the
No.
cash on the table.
No, because we have had developments like that here, and what we've seen is huge houses with absentee landlords, and that doesn't work very well either. So we're trying to learn from the past.
Okay. So there is a selection process
Yeah,
based on how you present
Yeah.
as a contributor to
Yeah.
the community
yeah.
and to the land.
And
And so
as-
your contribution that you proposed is
So yeah, I'm looking at one of the plots is going to be an off-grid plot, hopefully, if we get planning permission from the council, which is a whole other story. And so I'm looking at developing a form of Ecovillage demonstration site, because we have a lot of technology, both kind of physical technology but also social technology around sustainability that have been developed here. And it can be difficult coming into Findhorn to be able to see what is it? Where is the Ecovillage? People ask sometimes.
and that's we experience the same at Crystal Waters
Yeah.
too. You know that they come in and it's like, well, where you come to the front and it sort of seems a little bit dead unless there's an event happening.
Yeah,
And just to have that openness,
Yeah.
that interaction, that point of connection where people can see all the different parts.
yeah.
Oops, my hand's getting really tired. I'm just going to shift that. There we go. That's better.
Yeah, and there's also something about, so I want to have it as a demonstration site, but also live in it, and especially for young people to be able to come in as woofers or volunteers and live in this demonstration center, to also sort of internally experience the lifestyle and how that works and feels, and what are the challenges, and have because again, coming back to the Vandana Shivas and what she was saying about our fossilized mindset, I think that the only way we can really work with it is by putting our physical bodies in different environments and having the physical body experience a different lifestyle that might perhaps also inform our brains and how our brains work. And so for me, that's an important part of Ecovillage demonstration. And especially for young people to come through, because it can be difficult as a young person to come into a community. Either you pay a lot of money to go on a program, or you have to know somebody here already who can, host you.
So I think we shared a kind of desire to find a way to support young people to not only experience it, but to find a way into these places. And it's something that I'm really quite passionate about doing back home in Crystal Waters, and I'm kind of seeing a shift already happening, because a lot of the young people who grew up at Crystal Waters, who went away, are now coming back and saying, we really want to try and find a way more for this to happen, and that our friends can also come and live here, and we can turn this place into a really vibrant, dynamic place. And I also think that places like this are really important, kind of like hubs or bases or beacons of hope for the young people out in the streets at the moment, and that we need to see ourselves in that bigger picture rather than just as a place where we can live comfortably.
Oh, for sure.
And I think we have a really big responsibility in these communities.
I see it almost as a an act of service somehow, to be able to host and to give experience of this grounded lifestyle. And I mean, I'm very active in the climate movement, and I worked in refugee camps, and a lot of activism happens quite a lot in a headspace actually, and then it gets very emotional. And for me, it's been so helpful to also feel that connection with a grounded lifestyle. So there's not, or I guess that I know the experience of living according to the values I'm trying to promote. And it felt really awful, to be completely honest, to be on the streets shouting for climate action and trying to get corporations to do something about it, and at the same time being dependent on those corporations. And somehow that tension inside me was, and I'm not saying everybody can live and grow their own vegetables, but at least to have a space where you can come and experience it for a while, be part of it, and internalize it. I guess
think so, but also that there is the opportunity to have that, the opportunity to explore that authentic connection and what it really means. Because I was the same when I was a teenager. I was out in the streets yelling about the issues that were really important at that time. And every generation has issues that they're fighting. And I sort of popped out the other end and I hid away, I think, for almost a year. I think I was telling you the other day, and I didn't really speak to many people because I was really looking, well, if not that, then what? I was so disappointed with humanity. And I was thinking, so how are we to live where we can live with love and compassion and hope and make a positive way forward? And that's kind of when I started to explore permaculture in a much deeper way. And as you said, that sense of being able to ground yourself. And there's something that was on the gate of the garden here. It's like love in action. That's what it is, really. You know, and it's about caring about all the bigger issues, making a difference in those through our daily actions and reality, and supporting the activists who are out there kind of, you know, fighting the fires simultaneously. It's doing all at the one time.
And it's all connected.
Yes.
So it's not doing one thing or another, but how can it all inform us to make better choices?
So thank you so much for the time you've taken to walk me around your garden and your community. And I know there's so much more. I'm hoping that maybe I might be able to go for a bit of a wander later on. And if that's okay to walk around with my camera and chat about the things that I've noticed. I've sort of taken notes in my mind about things you've said as we've walked around before. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Okay. See ya. So that's all for today. Thanks so much for joining us. Head on over to my YouTube channel, the link's below, and then you'll be able to watch this conversation, but also make sure that you subscribe, because that way you'll be notified of all new films that come out, and also the release of the extended tour of Lammas Ecovillage, where we go into the landscape and the common spaces too. And also you'll get notified of all the new interviews and conversations that come out. So thanks again for joining us. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.